1, 2, 3, 4. Woo!
Welcome back to Me and the Geek, a weekly geekly conversation with a different geek to bring you a peek into their geeky world. We've got a great conversation lined up for you this week, but first I want to remind you that you can check back every Thursday morning for a new episode here. You can subscribe on iTunes, on Stitcher, on SoundCloud or YouTube, pretty much anywhere where you find podcasts, you can find Me and the Geek. You can also find us online at meandthegeekpod.com with links for more great stuff there as well. This week's geek is Brandt Cooley. He's known as Professor Shyguy. He's a chiptunes musician and a great rock star in general. He's also a buddy of mine. He was the theme song creator for the first podcast that I ever did, and I'm lucky to have him on for this episode. We're going to talk about his musical background a little bit, the Professor Shyguy character and project in specific, and then also he's going to tell us a little bit about chiptunes and nerdcore music, which is something that I've been interested in for a long time, but I think a lot of people sort of don't understand and maybe are afraid to ask. That's what this show's for. So sit back and relax. After the episode, I'm going to have some information on how you can feedback to us. But right now, just enjoy this week's Me and the Geek. This week on Me and the Geek, it's Professor Shyguy. Some might know him as Brandt Cooley. That's how I met him first, and he was a pretty cool guy back then. But then he got his doctorate in, I'm not sure what professor has his doctorate in. Welcome to the show, sir. How are you doing?
Doing well. Wait, is there cursing?
You can curse. Here's what I will probably...
My doctorate's in BS.
Your doctorate's in BS. There you go. So, but how are you, sir? How you doing?
Doing well. Just keeping busy.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's all about stacking projects.
Yeah.
So first of all, let's introduce the audience, although I'm imagining a lot of folks don't know about me, but they know about you, and they might be listening to the show for the first time. But for those that have never heard of Professor Shyguy, who the heck are you? Where is this moniker from?
Well, the origin of this project is I had a band, and we weren't nerdy, we were just a band. But trying to play shows with a band is tricky because there's 4 of us or 5 of us, and traveling and schedules and blah, 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 it becomes expensive and hard to manage. So I wanted to start a solo thing that was just me because I want to play music all the time, everywhere. And I started, and I failed, and I hated it. The first time I did it, I hated it. I didn't want to make it like the band, and I've been making like rock-type music all my life, and the band was that. And I tried this pop thing, trying to make a Shyguy. It was just called Shyguy, and I failed. I was a failure. And I stopped for a year, and then I brought it back with a chiptune thing to make the story short. And the chiptune thing made me love it and comfortable, and now I have a lot of fun.
Do you think that it was and we're going to go back a little bit further and get into your musical history in general, but do you think that it was the limitation of the palette of chiptunes, and I'm going to get you to define chiptunes in a minute, but do you think it was the limitation of the palette that made you excited about the project?
Not at first, but I know exactly what you mean, because later it did. Because when I first started doing it, it wasn't with a Game Boy, it was cheating, it was fake bit, or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter. But I was composing the same way that I've always composed. But whenever a guy saw me play, I was playing in Nashville in a yard, basically, next to a hot dog stand that my roommate worked at.
This is the glamour of showbiz, folks.
It really is. Some guy saw me, really liked my music, gave me his old Game Boy that was outfitted to perform with, like the LSDJ cartridge, which you put in a Game Boy to make the music. And he just gave it to me because he wasn't using it, and that was the best part of the one major step of growth. So it would sometimes when I'm composing something and I can't get it to sound chiptuney enough because I have too much palette to work with, I will literally go to a Game Boy and recompose the whole thing in the Game Boy just to make sure that it stays simple enough. I guess, yeah, it's you understand what I'm saying.
Yes, no, because you boil the idea down,
yeah.
Even musically, that's I want to get to the core of the thing that I'm trying to say and strip the other parts of it away,
yeah.
And just get to the expression. I find a lot that the further I box myself in before I start a project creatively, the more excited I am about the project, and the broader it ends up becoming because of the channel through which I sort of shove it, you know?
Yeah, it's more you can focus harder on the things that matter rather than trying to make a bigger, broader, uglier thing.
Yeah. Sometimes the blank page is scary.
Yeah.
So, like, if you start drawing a square, then you're like, well, I can fill up that square, you know?
Yeah.
So let's define, for those that don't know, let's really get to the butts and bolts and nuts, so to speak, or I guess it should be the blips and bloops.
Bleeps.
Yeah, let's define chiptunes.
Chiptune it's at the heart of it. It's made with like a chip, like from a Game Boy, for example. Like you put the LSD cartridge into it, and you literally use it to make sounds that only the Game Boy can make. Of course, the Game Boy can't make sounds it can't make, but it has a very, very limited chip to work with. So like chiptune comes from like taking a Game Boy, taking an NES, taking an Atari. People like hacking all kind of things and make the sounds and compose the music that they make, or sing the music that they compose. So yeah, it comes down to really that. I do a lot of fake bit, is what it's called. I do a mix, so I'll use a Game Boy to make some things, and I'll use like Reason or FL Studio to make other things.
So before the chiptunes, let's talk about where Brandt Cooley came from, musically speaking. When did you take up the guitar? I'm assuming it's probably your first instrument.
Guitar. Well, no, piano came first, but I just didn't focus on it as hard because girls.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so growing up listening to like my parents' music, because that's all you have as a kid. But I remember meeting my friend Jared. My dad listened to a lot of Michael Bolton and stuff like that. My mom listened to a lot of old R&B, which is funny because now things have swapped where me and my dad listen to a lot of similar music, and I don't listen to country, and that's all my mom listens to now. So she went from stuff that luckily I grew up around her old R&B stuff, and now I just hate everything she listens to.
You're like, your taste has turned bland in your old age.
And my dad likes my music, so we get along on our taste. Ha ha. That's vain. So I remember meeting my friend Jared and listening to like MC Hammer and all that stuff, and then he showed me Gwar, because he had an older brother that listened to things, and Gwar was like the first rock band that I ever listened to. I remember him putting in the CD, and the song Meat Sandwich came on, and it's really weird, but it was, like nothing I'd never heard. And then a different friend of mine, his older sister's boyfriend, we were riding in his car, and he put on Primus, and Jerry was a Racecar driver, came on. And that song was also like nothing I'd ever heard, ever, and blew my mind, and I loved it. So I really liked, like, weird, heavy music for most of my youth. The weirder it was, the better, usually. And then I got onto Pantera. My brother showed me Pantera and Sepultura and Korn, because that was a thing at the time. There's a lot of bands growing up that I'm embarrassed to say I listen to now, or say that I listened to then that I'm embarrassed to say now. But Tool was another one. Actually was. When I first heard it, I was like, he's singing pretty and it's heavy music, and I don't like it. My brother was like, buy this album, and I bought it, and I returned it to Walmart, because I bought it at Walmart, which is weird. And it was instead of the artwork, it was just a barcode, because they couldn't show the artwork, because it was dirty. But a week later, I was like, I really, really, really want that CD back, so I went and bought it again. And then getting to college, really expanded my music taste, hearing Ben Folds 5 and hearing a lot of Stevie Wonder, finding a lot of Stevie Wonder and all these things, and getting to say growing up, it's always I don't like country and rap, because that was the thing to say when you were little, but getting to rap and hip hop and stuff like that, not particularly country.
Well, but even there, finding the pieces of the art form or that genre that you can appreciate or understand at least why other people do like it. Eventually you find your country song and you're like, well, this ain't for me, but this one's a pretty good one.
Yeah. There's a song Breakdown Here by, what's her name? Julie Roberts, not Julia Roberts, but the worst stage name ever, Julie Roberts.
Isn't that a terrible, and it's not her actual name. You're like, what are you doing?
And then there are bands that I like Protest the Hero. I really like, is this really heavy band, and they're kind of in the genre of bands that I don't particularly like, but every genre has its band or at least a song that's pretty great.
Yeah. So when did you pick up the guitar? You said you started with piano, but dropped.
Oh, yeah,
you
yeah.
didn't stick with it. I was the same way. My father wanted me to do piano lessons, and I was just like, I can't carry this anywhere and play this for anybody. You know, like this isn't helpful to me in any way.
Yeah, I could be the idiot in high school running around singing really stupid songs, chasing people with a guitar. I couldn't do that with a keyboard unless it was a keytar,
which was not cool.
Amazing.
Well, it wasn't cool by the time we were in high school.
No, it's cool now, and it was cool before you were in high school. I picked up the guitar around 18, probably. I think it was around 17, 18. My brother's roommate had a guitar, and I played with it the wrong way, like on my lap, playing it, not knowing how to work it. But I found out, I figured out that the little lullaby song. Like, I figured that out on guitar just because I learned everything by ear. And I was like, I want a guitar, so I got a guitar for that, that Christmas. And then kind of took off from there.
That's pretty cool. So what was your first band?
First band, I think the name, like there was me and my friends would play covers and stuff like that. But like the first band where I was like, I want to write songs and stuff was called Static Farm. That's a band name for a high school kid.
Yeah, that is a great band name for a high school kid. So what was the first project that you felt like, okay, this is a thing that Mike could go somewhere, and actually this is I'm grown up stuff now. I'm working now as an artist. What was the first one that you feel like this is something that I'm going to look back on, and that's my start as a professional musician?
Yeah. It was whenever I got to college and was going by like Brandt Cooley, like just my name, because I was just playing acoustic with me, myself, and I. But like I remember just walking into coffee shops and just being like, I want to play here. Want me to play you a song? And I would play them a song, and then they would let me play. Like, I would go back and play and make flyers and stuff like that and just flyer up campus.
And that goes back to where we started the conversation, just starting to hustle it, man. So as you're hustling, that's where the Professor Shyguy idea comes from. You're too busy, or you want to be more busy than the other people that you collaborate with can afford to be or have time to be, and so you end up with a project on your own. That's where this podcast came from, man. I do a show already, and I can't get together with my host on more than once a week or so, and I'm like, I want to talk more often than that. So I'll just do one by myself, and I'll call people.
It's a lot of work, but it's so worth it. Like, it's so, well, I mean, A, you can work all the time and do whatever you need to do. B, it all goes to you. So like, I'm making a living as, as Professor Shyguy. I'm like making a living playing music. I don't have to wait tables or anything like that. I'm just making music. And it's because it's by myself, and the profit margin is high, because I don't have to split it or anything.
Well, let's talk about one of those gigs that you got upcoming. One of the reasons why we wanted to have you on the show at this time, you're going to be at PAX East. This show is going to air on March 5th, so you're going to be there this weekend.
Yeah, PAX East is awesome, man. I went there last year and did a similar thing where I just played the jam space, and that's what I'm doing this year. But I'm playing also like party with a bunch of streamers, and then an after party on Monday with MC Frontalot and Freeze Pop and The World is Square.
So conventions like this are something that you've done a lot in the past couple of years. Is this something that you'd done before Professor Shyguy started, or did it just sort of fit what you're doing with the music?
Well, with the other band, we weren't exactly a steampunk band, and we didn't know what steampunk was when we started dressing up the way we did, but we found out that, we were dressing up like steampunk, and there were these conventions. So we started playing these conventions, which weren't my favorite conventions. Some of them were awesome, but most of them were odd. It's not as similar. They're not similar people to me. They're awesome people, but they don't share a lot of interests.
Yeah, there's a reason you weren't going to those conventions anyway as attendees.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah. But I was like, I want to make a living out of going to conventions, and, of course, conventions that I'd rather go to. And, like, there's a lot of anime conventions I play, and I'm not big on anime, but, like, they have other stuff there, and, at least more interesting than... they're more likely to have game stuff there than they are at a steampunk convention.
Yeah, there's not a lot of steampunk Ataris, I would imagine.
Which is funny because steampunk music is so electronic and gothy and weird. Generally, my other band wasn't, but we were crazy or we were sort of circusy, rockin' heavy stuff. But yeah, I just wanted to make a living at conventions because I was like, I get to go to the convention and attend the convention and play at the convention, and that means I get to go to the convention. I get paid to go to conventions, which is pretty awesome. And now it's starting to expand.
Anytime you can take the thing that you love, the thing that you would actually fork out money to do, given, a perfect set of circumstances, and you could turn that around and make that part of your job, I think that's absolutely the thing that everybody wants to do, right?
Yeah. That's why there's porn industry so big.
Exactly. Yeah, precisely. That's it. Let's talk about this convention in particular. What was last year's experience for you like? Why was it so great that you wanted to come back?
Everything outside of the walls was a nightmare. Parking in Boston is the worst thing. It's the worst. It's the worst thing. But once I'd, got all my gear in and stuff, the jam space, I played at 2 p.m. on Friday when everybody's still checking in and nobody's settled and nobody's doing anything. And it's still an awesome show because there's just so many people there. Plus, the jam space is that building the convention center is huge. And it's probably 5 blocks from anything else you have to walk to get to the jam space. So you, A, have to know it exists, and B, have to figure out how to get there. I asked so many people trying to find it myself and nobody knew. And it was still a pretty... a decent amount of people there, 40 or 50 people in that jam space room, and then I sold a lot of merch for just being tucked away. People that hadn't heard me would buy my discography jump drive things, which are $50. Multiple people that had never heard me just bought them. PAX is insane. PAX is insane. But even then, as an attendee, it's amazing.
I'm going to give you some credit, and somebody that doesn't know you that's listening to this, they might be like, why would they pay $50 for your discography if they've never heard of you? Are you talking about the discographies that are on the NES carts, right?
No, I didn't have those then.
I was going to say, okay, so
those
you're going to kill with those.
Yeah, I ordered, the damn Chinese New Year has delayed a lot of my USB drive, parts. So I'm only going to have 16 to sell at PAX, and I think I'm going to sell out, which is awesome, which is going to be crazy if I do.
So speaking of, before we get any further, is PAX the kind of thing that will be sold out ahead of time, or can we give people a link or some information that they can follow if they're listening to this sort of last minute and want to show up?
I think it's sold out.
Okay, that's cool.
The PAX usually sells out except for PAX South.
Are you going to be playing anywhere outside of the convention that weekend?
Yeah. Well, on Monday, I'm playing in Cambridge, Massachusetts. With, like I said earlier, Frontalot, Freeze Pop, and World of Square. It's going to be at 7 at a Middle East restaurant and nightclub.
Nice. All right. All right. So before we get you out of here, I do want to talk about one more thing. I talk every week on meandthegeekpod.com to a different geek, a different expert in their own little world of geekdom. And with you, I wanted to help explain to me and to whoever might be listening, Nerdcore.
So, Nerdcore, it started as a term for nerdy hip-hop. It was a hip-hop thing. I think it was coined by MC Frontalot. He was the first to use it, the guy I'm playing with Monday after PAX. He's the guy. Him and MC Chris are the guys for nerdy music. And then MC Chris didn't want to call himself Nerdcore for a long time. He was an angry little man. But he seems to have calmed down. Him, I don't know. I know Damien a little bit, not very well, Frontalot. Either way, it's kind of awesome that I'm playing with him. It's kind of cathartic because he whenever I wanted to find out what I wanted to do for my solo act, and I was like, I know nerdy stuff. I can make a whole act out of nerdy stuff because I have plenty of that knowledge. I haven't written into songs, but he was the guy that I put it on. I was like, nerdy hip hop. This is gonna be silly, and I put on the CD. I was like, oh, this is actually super good. It was surprising. I was surprised that it was not a parody thing. It was somebody that was rapping about nerdy stuff that wasn't trying to be a joke.
I think a lot of hip hop fans would not be surprised at that, because if you look at some of the best in more mainstream hip hop especially over the last decade or so, even before the rise of nerdcore rap, there was a lot of this going on in mainstream hip hop. You've got, heavy hitters in the rap genre that are themselves pretty big geeks and are making these, references to Nintendo and Sega Genesis games. And those go all the way back to the beginnings of gangster rap. Ice Cube and Dr. Dre would drop the occasional Sega Genesis reference.
Yeah. And like Blackalicious is like not nerdy music, but he has like, the alphabet song, and like they do things like there are people that are outside of that genre that are doing things that are intelligent that could that could just as easily fit in nerdcore like type music. And it's at a point now where it's kind of growing up in a way where it doesn't want to be so much in the box, because like there's different kind of hip hop that you can all put in the same box, and nerdcore isn't one of those that people want to put in that same box as normal hip hop. But there are a lot of guys that are like making that crossover, and they're doing it like really well, because the stuff they're already making doesn't sound like how like Christian rock sounds like Christian rock.
Yes.
It has its own weird thing. That's kind of the thing with nerdcore. Nerdcore has a sound, but there are guys that don't have that particular sound. I think, is that band Mute Math? Are they Christian or something like that?
I think the members are Christian, but they're not on one of the Christian labels kind of deal, and therefore they're not really considered a Christian act. It's like, Katy Perry is in a lot. Yes, or Creed,
was. Oh yes. Yeah, Creed too. Yeah, so I mean, there's that kind of thing where there's a lot of guys that are those type of people. Like Mega Ran, he was doing non-nerdy stuff before as Random, and now he's like Mega Ran became his nerdy thing, and he's kind of straddling the line as well. It's funny because like whenever I was working on this album 3 that I'm working on, like I was all day today working on it. It was a thing where I don't want to write things that are specifically nerdy on this album. I'll still have my like singles and stuff, offshoots that are specifically nerdy songs if I want to write about like the last League of Legends song. I did that on the album though. It's going to be about being a nerd, but not specifically nerdy things. And then Mega Ran's doing the same thing. He just made he's making his new album, which isn't like specifically nerdy. Like he had a album that was all Final Fantasy beats and an album that was all Mega Man beats. And Dr. Awkward's another guy that's doing stuff like that. That's really good, and kind of making that crossover where he wants to be accepted by the nerdy community, but it doesn't have to be expressively nerdy all the time.
Well, it's just like Brandt, it goes back to what we talked about when we first started the show, the idea of putting yourself creatively in a box so that you can like hone the art form and then grow out of the box. Like
exactly that.
So, as a matter of fact, I think that's actually probably a pretty good place that we could put a bow on it. That kind of sort of sums it up. So, before we let you go, though, remind everybody or tell everybody if they don't know you or didn't know you before this episode, where they can find you online and keep up with all the different places Professor Shyguy goes.
Facebook.com/Professor Shyguy or Twitter.com/Professor Shyguy are always good places just to find updates and just silly stuff or samples that I'm working on and stuff like that. And then like ProfessorShyguy.bandcamp.com is the place to go to hear the music or buy it if you want to buy it. I mean, you can get it on Spotify or Grooveshark or iTunes or any of that stuff, but Bandcamp's usually the easiest.
And what's the last album that you had out? And then I want you to tell us a little bit about the forthcoming album. Tease people a little bit. The one that they can buy today, though, is the most recent.
The most recent is a cover album. It's called History 1-1. I have 2 cover albums that are the most recent, because like I did the R&B side of things that are everything that I love that makes Professor Shyguy, and then the other album was everything else, like all like the there's a Tool cover on there, and like Tori Amos and Bjork and the Bird and the Bee and all these random things, and a lot of collaborations with people from like Ashley Birch and like Molly Lewis and the Double Clicks and I Fight Dragons and Amanda Lepre and stuff like that. Like it was just a big fun cover collaboration craziness. As far as the upcoming album, the plan is to release it June 1st. Hopefully I can make that deadline that I set for myself, but it's my own shit, so I can change it if I want to.
There you go. But
it's going to be like it's sort of about the cycle of bullying, and in my experience, it's the nerdy community, and it works in, it's sort of any subculture. where you separate yourself from being outcasts, and then within that own, like within your own subculture, you create outcasts. Like you get bullied, so you make your own subculture, and then you start bullying other people in your subculture when you went there to escape from that kind of thing, and it's a stupid cycle.
Yes. Oh, but I was listening to a podcast talking about the movie Real Genius the other day, and they were pointing out the fact that even in this community of where it's nothing but nerds, effectively, okay, these are all the most intelligent people in the world. You still got the jock nerds and the nerd nerds. Like there's still a social hierarchy even amongst the thing, and it's just human nature, I guess, that we gotta order ourselves. We've got to group ourselves. Yeah,
it becomes like it's a very gradual thing that gets you there, and I understand how it happens. I was in that stupid mind state, like of like girl gamers are fake gamers. Like I had that period for a very short time. Then I was like, oh yeah, they're just finally in a position where they can be comfortable saying that they like geeky things whenever we weren't in a position where we could easily say that. And when we did, we got bullied. And now it's not like that anymore, so more people are open to saying it. It doesn't mean they're fake.
Yeah, they just didn't want to get kicked out of the lunchroom, Brandt.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
That's a really fascinating concept for a Chiptunes album, man, I gotta tell you. I liked it. No, but I like, again, it goes back to the same idea. Like, you're not putting yourself in the box. Like, you can say a broader message, and it can still be very relevant and appealing to the core audience of this, what is considered to be like a small niche. But at the same time, it doesn't have to be just for them. It can be a message for everybody as an artist.
Yeah, I want other people to listen to it too. Like, I want other people to be comfortable saying they like it. I mean, if we can, it's good for everybody. The raising tide raises all boats, or whatever.
That's right. It is good for everybody. That's going to be my endorsement. You could put that on the next album. Professor Shyguy, it's good for everybody. All right, man. So thank you so much for joining us this week. But whenever the album is out, if it's June or later, we'll have you back on, and you and I will talk a little video games. We'll talk a little Gamergate too. That's a topic that I want to cover. I want to have some girls on to talk about it as well.
Yeah, but God, it's stupid. That's part of. This album is not. It's not. It came. That's part of it.
It came as you were working
how ridiculous
through.
That
yes,
is. Yeah.
Yes. And for those that don't know, we'll get to that topic eventually, I promise, in more depth. But for today, I just want to say thank you again to you, Brandt Cooley, Professor Shyguy, for joining us this week on Me and the Geek.
Thanks, man. Bye-bye, everybody.
A great conversation with Professor Shyguy, Brandt Cooley, this week's geek on meandthegeekpod.com. Hope you enjoyed that one. And don't forget to check him out at PAX East or on his website so you can find any other locations near you where he's going to be playing sometime soon. He's all over the country, folks. So check him out. Definitely look up his music. You can find that on, as he said, iTunes and Spotify, but also on his Bandcamp site directly where you can purchase it straight from him. Some really cool stuff in his catalog as well. Next week here on Me and the Geek, we've got an awesome conversation coming with Macy Jones. She's a doctoral candidate at LSU in the School of Performing Arts and the theater department specifically, but she's also a Dungeons and Dragons geek, and we're going to be talking to her about role-playing in general and D&D specifically. So watch out for that next Thursday. Between here and there, catch up with the archives. It's all happening at meandthegeekpod.com. Email us if you've got something to say about the show or you want to suggest a topic for the future. Me and the Geek at teamprocreate.com. Until next week, I'm Joel Sharpton. You can find me at The Rogues Life on Twitter. This week's geek was Brandt Cooley, Professor Shyguy, and this has been the podcast.
1, 2, 3, 4. Woo!
Me and the Geek is a proud member of the Procast Network, a Procreate production. Procreate is a community of artists in film, music, the digital arts, and fine arts that helps them connect and collaborate on projects. You can find out more at teamprocreate.com. Also, be sure to check out one of our other great shows like Movie Buzzed. The Movie Buzzed podcast is exactly what it sounds like. It's a place for friends to get together, watch a good movie, and catch a good buzz. Every episode, your host Zach will be joined by a special guest or 5 to have some fun. Movie Buzzed is where you'll find your friends and a good buzz waiting for you.